Chapter 1: The Missing Father, the boy searching for a blueprint. Every generation inherits a question it must answer. For some generations, the question is about survival. For others, it is about freedom, wealth, or progress. But for millions of young men growing up today, the question is more personal. What does it mean to become a man when nobody ever showed you how? A boy enters this world with enormous potential. But potential alone is not enough. A child may be born male, but becoming a man requires something deeper. It requires guidance. It requires challenges. It requires examples. It requires someone who can look at a young boy and say, "This is what you are capable of becoming." Throughout history, societies understood a fundamental truth. A boy does not simply grow into a man because he gets older. Age creates maturity in the body, but responsibility creates maturity in the soul. For thousands of years, cultures created systems to guide boys into adulthood. Older men taught younger men. Fathers taught sons. Masters taught apprentices. Warriors trained future warriors. Communities prepared the next generation. The message was clear: you are not only here to exist, you are here to carry responsibility. But what happens when that guide disappears? What happens when a boy grows up without the person who was supposed to introduce him to the world? What happens when the first example of manhood is missing? This is the hidden struggle of the fatherless man. Not simply the absence of a person, but the absence of a blueprint. A father is more than a biological connection. A father represents a bridge between childhood and adulthood. A child begins life dependent on others. A man must eventually become someone others can depend on. The father figure stands between these two worlds. He teaches the child, the world can be difficult, but you are capable of facing it. Failure does not destroy you. Mistakes are lessons. Responsibility is not a punishment. It is the price of becoming powerful. A father introduces a boy to the reality that life will demand something from him. And that demand is not cruelty. It is an invitation. An invitation to become stronger. The psychologist Carl Jung wrote extensively about the importance of archetypes within the human mind. Among these archetypes is the father figure. The father represents order, direction, wisdom, authority, protection. The father teaches a child that freedom without responsibility becomes chaos. A young boy naturally possesses energy, curiosity, and aggression. These qualities are not evil. They are raw potential. But raw potential requires guidance. A river without boundaries floods everything around it. A powerful person without discipline can destroy himself and others. The purpose of the father figure is not to remove a boy's strength. It is to shape it, to transform energy into purpose. Imagine two young boys. Both are intelligent. Both have dreams. Both have potential. One grows up with a man who teaches him how to handle failure, how to control anger, how to respect others, how to work when motivation disappears, how to keep promises. The other grows up trying to discover these lessons alone. He must answer questions that should have been answered for him. Am I valuable? What does strength look like? How should a man behave? How do I handle pain? How do I become someone others respect? The second boy is not doomed, but his journey is different. He must build consciously what others receive naturally. This is where many fatherless men experience a hidden battle. The world sees the adult, but inside the adult may still exist a young boy searching for answers. A man may become successful. He may become wealthy. He may become respected. But deep inside, he may still be asking, am I enough? Would someone be proud of me? Would my father have accepted me? Sometimes the greatest battles are invisible. Psychologists who study childhood development often emphasize the importance of early relationships. A child learns about the world through the people closest to them. When a child experiences consistent love, guidance, and protection, they often develop a foundation of trust. They learn, I matter, I can depend on people, I can face challenges. But when important relationships are unstable or absent, some children develop different beliefs. They may learn, I must handle everything alone. I cannot trust people. I have to prove my worth. These beliefs can follow a person into adulthood. This explains why some men spend their entire lives trying to prove themselves. They chase success, they chase recognition, they chase respect, not because ambition is wrong. Ambition can create greatness, but sometimes achievement becomes a search for something deeper. A man is not only trying to win, he is trying to answer a question, am I worthy? History gives us countless examples of men who carried difficult beginnings. Their stories reveal an important truth. A missing father creates an obstacle. It does not create a destiny. Frederick Douglass was born into slavery and experienced separation from his family. Yet through education and determination, he transformed himself into one of the greatest voices for freedom in American history. Malcolm X experienced childhood instability and lost his father at a young age. Yet through discipline, education, and purpose, he transformed anger and pain into intellectual power. Nelson Mandela lost his father early in life, but through mentors, community, and responsibility, he developed into one of the world's most respected leaders. Their lives reveal something important. A person can lose a foundation and still build a structure, but they must build intentionally. The danger for the fatherless man is not simply that he lacks guidance. The greater danger is searching for guidance in the wrong places. Every human being needs belonging. Every human being needs identity. Every human being wants to feel important. When a young man does not find positive examples, something else may offer itself. A gang may offer brotherhood. A destructive movement may offer purpose. A reckless lifestyle may offer identity. The young man is not searching only for destruction. He is searching for something he feels he lost. A place where he belongs, a group that accepts him, a reason to believe he matters. This is why mentorship matters. This is why fathers matter. This is why strong communities matter. Because a vacuum will always be filled. The question is, what will fill it? But there is another truth that must be understood. A fatherless man is not defined only by what he lost. He must also be defined by what he chooses to build. The past explains a person. It does not have to imprison a person. Viktor Frankl, who survived unimaginable suffering, argued that human beings possess a final freedom, the ability to choose their response. A man may not choose the circumstances of his childhood, but he can choose the meaning he gives them. He can choose whether his pain becomes an excuse, or whether his pain becomes a responsibility. The journey from fatherless boy to strong man begins with a difficult realization. Nobody is coming to rescue you. This sounds harsh, but it is also liberating. Because the moment a man accepts responsibility for his own life, he discovers his power. He begins asking different questions. Not why did I not receive what I needed, but what can I become despite what I did not receive? Not who failed me, but what responsibility belongs to me now? A father gives a boy his beginning, but a man must eventually choose his direction. The missing father may explain the wound, but discipline, mentors, wisdom, and purpose can build the future. The boy who searched for a blueprint can become the man who creates one. And perhaps the greatest transformation happens when he realizes the father he needed may have been absent, but the man he can become is still waiting to be built. Chapter 2: The Father Wound. The hidden battle inside many men. Some wounds are visible. A broken bone can be seen. A physical injury can be measured. But some of the deepest wounds in human beings remain invisible. They exist in thoughts, in fears, in behaviors, in the silent questions a person carries for years. One of these hidden wounds is the absence of a father figure. Not every man who grows up without a father experiences the same struggles. Human beings are complex. Some men grow up without fathers and become extraordinary. Some men grow up with fathers and still experience pain. The issue is not simply whether a father was physically present. The deeper question is, was there someone who provided guidance, protection, encouragement, and wisdom during the most important stages of development? Because childhood is not only about surviving, it is about building an internal foundation. And when that foundation is damaged, the effects can follow a person into adulthood. A young child does not simply observe the world. A child creates a model of the world. Through early relationships, a child begins answering fundamental questions. Can I trust people? Am I valuable? Will someone protect me? Can I handle difficulty? These questions may never be spoken aloud, but they influence the way a person sees life. The psychologist John Bowlby, one of the founders of attachment theory, argued that early relationships create patterns that influence emotional development. A child who experiences consistent care often develops what psychologists call secure attachment. The child learns, I am worthy of love. The world is not always dangerous. I can seek help when I need it. But when important relationships are unstable, unpredictable, or absent, some children develop different survival strategies. They may learn I must depend only on myself. I cannot trust others. I must earn people's approval. These beliefs can become invisible rules guiding adult behavior. For many fatherless men, the deepest struggle is not simply missing a person. It is missing certain lessons. Lessons such as, how do I handle failure? How do I control my emotions? How do I deal with rejection? How do I become responsible? How do I lead? How do I protect others? A father does not only provide answers, a father demonstrates them. Children learn less from what adults say and more from what adults repeatedly do. A boy watches how his father responds when life becomes difficult. Does he panic? Does he quit? Does he blame others? Or does he remain calm and search for solutions? A boy watches how his father treats people. Does he show respect? Does he keep his word? Does he accept responsibility? These observations become lessons. When those lessons are missing, a young man may attempt to discover masculinity on his own. And this creates a dangerous situation, because the world provides many definitions of what it means to be a man. Some definitions are healthy, others are destructive. One message says, a man is someone who serves, protects, and carries responsibility. Another message says, a man is someone who dominates, seeks attention, and proves his superiority. Without guidance, a young man may struggle to know the difference. This is where the father wound often appears. The father wound is not simply sadness about an absent parent. It can appear as patterns of behavior. A man constantly searching for approval. A man who cannot accept criticism. A man who avoids responsibility because failure feels unbearable. A man who builds walls because vulnerability feels dangerous. A man who believes he must always prove himself. Consider the man who becomes obsessed with success. From the outside, he appears ambitious. People admire his discipline, they admire his achievements. But internally, another story may exist. Perhaps he is trying to answer a question that has followed him since childhood. Would I finally be enough if I achieved everything? Achievement is powerful, but achievement alone cannot heal every wound. A person can conquer the world and still struggle to find peace within himself. The philosopher and psychologist Alfred Adler studied how feelings of inferiority influence human behavior. He argued that people often respond to feelings of weakness by striving for improvement. This can produce greatness. A person who feels inadequate may develop extraordinary determination. But there is a difference between healthy growth and endless compensation. One says, I want to improve because I have potential. The other says, I must improve because I am worthless unless I succeed. The actions may look similar, but the internal experience is completely different. This is why some men achieve great things, but remain unhappy. They are fighting a battle nobody else can see. They are not only pursuing success, they are escaping insecurity. The father wound can also influence relationships. A man who never experienced consistent love may struggle to believe love will remain. He may push people away before they can leave. He may become emotionally distant. He may believe needing others is weakness. But humans are not designed for complete isolation. Strength does not mean needing nobody. Strength means being capable enough to build healthy connections. One of the greatest mistakes a wounded man can make is allowing his pain to become his identity. Pain can explain behavior, but it should not control destiny. A man can say, my father was absent. That is a fact, but he must not conclude, therefore I cannot become a good man. That is a prison. Viktor Frankl understood this principle deeply. After experiencing unimaginable suffering, he concluded that even when people cannot choose their circumstances, they still possess the ability to choose their response. This idea is powerful for the fatherless man. You cannot change the past. You cannot return to childhood. You cannot force someone to become the father they were not. But you can decide what you do with what happened. The wounded man asks, why did this happen to me? The developing man asks, what can I learn from this? The strong man asks, how can I use this experience to become better? Many men who experienced father absence eventually discover something important. The pain they carried can become the source of their purpose. A man who knows what it feels like to be ignored can become someone who listens. A man who knows what it feels like to lack guidance can become someone who guides others. A man who knows what it feels like to be abandoned can become someone who stays. The father wound is real, the struggle is real, but the wound is not the end of the story. A missing father may leave a gap, but that gap can be filled with wisdom, discipline, mentorship, responsibility, purpose. And eventually, the wounded boy can become the man who gives others what he once needed. Because the greatest victory is not pretending the wound never existed. The greatest victory is refusing to let the wound decide who you become. Chapter 3: The Lost Initiation. Why boys struggle to become men throughout human history. Almost every civilization understood a powerful truth. A boy does not automatically become a man. Time creates age, but responsibility creates maturity. The body grows naturally. The character must be built. For thousands of years, societies created pathways to guide boys through this transformation. They understood that becoming a man was not simply a biological event. It was a psychological and social transformation. A boy had to learn how to control himself, how to face hardship, how to serve others, how to carry responsibility, how to become useful to the community around him. But in the modern world, many of these pathways have disappeared. And one of the consequences is a generation of young men who have reached adulthood physically, but are still searching for identity. In ancient societies, childhood and adulthood were separated by meaningful challenges. A young man was not simply told, "You are now an adult." He was prepared, he was tested, he was taught, he was given responsibilities. The message was clear: you are moving from a life where others take care of you into a life where you must contribute. Anthropologists who studied traditional cultures discovered a common pattern across many societies. Young males often experienced initiation. Although the details differed between cultures, the purpose was similar. The boy had to leave behind an old identity and develop a new one. The first stage was separation. The young person was removed from the comfort of childhood. This represented, the world will no longer treat you as a child forever. The second stage was challenge. The young man faced difficulty. Not because society wanted to punish him, but because difficulty reveals capability. A person does not discover courage by avoiding fear. A person discovers courage by facing fear. The final stage was acceptance. The community recognized, this person now carries responsibility. He was no longer only someone who received. He was someone who contributed. This process existed because ancient societies understood something modern societies sometimes forget. Identity is created through action. A person does not become responsible by being told they are responsible. They become responsible by practicing responsibility. The ancient Greeks understood this. The Spartans created the agoge, a demanding system designed to develop discipline, endurance, and loyalty. The purpose was not simply creating fighters. It was creating citizens capable of sacrifice. A person who could control himself could serve something greater than himself. The samurai followed a similar principle. The ideal warrior was not simply someone skilled with a weapon. The ideal warrior was someone who mastered himself. Discipline came before power. Honor came before victory. Self-control came before influence. Many African societies also place strong emphasis on community-based growth. A young man was shaped not only by his parents, but by elders, relatives, and the wider community. Older men had a responsibility to transfer knowledge, to teach values, to prepare the next generation. A boy belonged to something larger than himself, but modern societies have changed. Many young men now grow up with fewer mentors, elders, communities, shared traditions, clear expectations. The question becomes, if society no longer creates strong pathways into adulthood, how does a young man discover what manhood requires? This uncertainty creates a dangerous space, because human beings naturally search for identity. A young man wants to know, where do I belong? What am I good at? What is expected of me? Who should I become? If positive answers are not available, negative answers may appear. Throughout history, destructive groups have understood this weakness. They offer young men brotherhood, identity, recognition, purpose, a place where they feel important. This is why some young men are attracted to dangerous environments. They are not always searching for destruction. Sometimes they are searching for meaning. They are searching for a place where someone says, "You matter." The tragedy is that the human needs are legitimate. Every person needs belonging. Every person needs purpose. Every person needs to feel valued. The problem is when these needs are satisfied through destructive paths. The psychologist Carl Jung believed that people need meaningful psychological development. A person cannot remain forever controlled by instinct and impulse. Maturity requires integrating different parts of ourselves. For a man, this means moving beyond "I want" toward "what is necessary," beyond "what benefits me" toward "what responsibility do I carry." This is one of the biggest differences between a boy and a man. A boy asks, "What can I get?" A man asks, "What can I build?" A boy asks, "Who will help me?" A man asks, "Who depends on me?" A boy seeks comfort, a man develops strength. But modern society often sends contradictory messages. Young men are told to become successful, but they are rarely taught what success requires. They are told to be independent, but they are rarely taught responsibility. They are told to follow their dreams, but they are rarely taught discipline. Dreams without discipline remain fantasies. Potential without responsibility remains unused. This is why many men experience a quiet crisis. They are not necessarily weak. They are simply uninitiated. They have never gone through the psychological transition from dependence to responsibility. The good news is that initiation does not only happen in childhood. A man can choose to begin the process at any stage of life. The moment he accepts responsibility is the moment transformation begins. A man can create his own initiation through discipline, through learning, through hardship, through service, through mentorship, through keeping promises to himself. Every difficult task completed becomes evidence. I am capable. Every responsibility accepted becomes a step toward maturity. The fatherless man faces a unique challenge. He may have missed the person who was supposed to guide his transformation, but he can still transform, because ultimately, becoming a man is not about what someone else gives you. It is about what you choose to develop within yourself. The strongest men in history were not created by easy lives. They were created by challenges they accepted. They learned. Pain can destroy you, or pain can train you. Hardship can make you bitter, or hardship can make you wiser. The difference is the meaning you give it. A boy waits for someone to tell him who he is. A man decides through his actions. The lost initiation can be found again, not through pretending the world is easy, but through accepting the responsibility required to become strong. Because the journey from boyhood to manhood has never been about age. It has always been about transformation. Chapter 4: The Men. Transform pain into power. How broken beginnings created extraordinary lives. History is filled with people who began life with disadvantages. Some were born into poverty. Some experienced abandonment. Some lost parents. Some grew up without the protection and guidance many children receive. But their stories reveal a powerful truth. A difficult beginning does not have to become a permanent identity. The circumstances of childhood can influence a person, but they do not have to define the person. The difference between those who remain trapped and those who transform is often one thing: a decision. The decision to take responsibility for what happens next. The world often looks at successful people and sees only the final result. It sees the leader, the athlete, the writer, the revolutionary, the entrepreneur. But behind every achievement is a hidden story. A story of struggle, a story of failure, a story of moments when quitting would have been easier. Greatness is rarely created by perfect circumstances. More often, it is created by people who learn how to use imperfect circumstances. Frederick Douglass, The Power of Knowledge Against Impossible Circumstances. Frederick Douglass was born in 1818 into slavery in the United States. His childhood was marked by separation, uncertainty, and hardship. He experienced the absence of a normal family structure. His mother was separated from him when he was young. His father was unknown. He entered life without many of the foundations that provide security for a child. Yet within those difficult circumstances, something extraordinary developed: a hunger for knowledge. As a young boy, Douglass discovered that education represented something powerful. It was not simply about reading words. It was about understanding the world. Knowledge gave him something slavery attempted to remove: the ability to think independently, the ability to imagine freedom, the ability to challenge the limits placed upon him. Douglass later became one of the greatest writers, speakers, and advocates for human freedom in history. His life demonstrates a profound principle. When external circumstances attempt to control a person, the development of the mind becomes an act of liberation. The lesson from Douglass is not that education magically removes every obstacle. The lesson is deeper. A person who develops himself internally becomes harder to defeat externally. Malcolm X turning anger into purpose. The life of Malcolm X shows another form of transformation. His childhood contained instability and loss. His father, Earl Little, died when Malcolm was young. His family experienced severe hardship. Eventually, Malcolm entered a difficult period of life involving crime and imprisonment. At that stage, he represented a young man carrying pain without direction. But prison became a turning point. Many people view prison only as a place of punishment. For Malcolm, it became a place of rebuilding. He began reading intensely. He studied history. He developed discipline. He transformed his mind. The same energy that once moved him toward destruction became the energy that moved him toward purpose. His anger became awareness. His frustration became determination. His pain became a mission. This is one of the most important lessons for wounded men. Pain contains energy. The question is not whether you have pain. Everyone does. The question is, what will you do with that energy? Will it destroy you, or will you transform it? Nelson Mandela, The Power of Mentors and Community. Nelson Mandela's story reveals another important lesson. A man does not always need one perfect person to guide him. Sometimes transformation comes through a community of influences. Mandela lost his father at a young age, but he was exposed to traditional leadership structures and mentors who shaped his understanding of responsibility. He observed how leaders make decisions, how communities solve problems, how people carry obligations larger than themselves. Mandela's strength was not created by one moment. It was built through years of learning, discipline, and reflection. His life demonstrates a missing father does not mean a missing opportunity for guidance. A teacher, a mentor, an elder, a coach, a community, any of these can become part of a person's development. Abraham Lincoln, building yourself through persistence. Abraham Lincoln's story represents another important principle. A person's beginning does not determine their destination. Lincoln grew up in poverty with limited formal education. Many opportunities available to others were unavailable to him. Yet he developed himself through reading, learning, and persistence. He faced repeated failures, political defeats, personal struggles, moments when giving up would have been understandable. But he continued. Lincoln's life shows that strength is not only about talent, it is about endurance. The ability to continue learning, the ability to continue improving, the ability to continue moving forward despite setbacks. Cristiano Ronaldo, discipline beyond circumstances. In the modern world, Cristiano Ronaldo represents a different type of transformation. His childhood was not one of wealth and comfort. Growing up in Madeira, Portugal, his family had limited resources. He experienced challenges early, but he developed something that became one of his greatest advantages: unusual discipline. Many people have talent. Far fewer have the discipline required to develop talent. Ronaldo's success was built through years of training, attention to detail, constant improvement, mental toughness. His story demonstrates circumstances may influence where you start, but habits influence where you finish. The common pattern. When we examine these lives, a pattern appears. Different countries, different centuries, different challenges, but similar principles. First, they accepted reality. They did not waste their entire lives fighting the fact that the past had happened. Second, they developed themselves. They gained knowledge. They built discipline. They improved their abilities. Third, they found purpose. They discovered something bigger than personal pain. Fourth, they transformed suffering into service. Their struggles became useful because they helped others. This is the difference between suffering and meaningful suffering. Suffering alone can break a person, but suffering combined with purpose can create strength. A fatherless man must understand something important. The absence of guidance creates a challenge. But history proves that challenges can be overcome. The question is not, what did I lose? The question is, what will I build? The strongest men are not always those who received everything they needed. Sometimes they are those who decided to become what they needed. The boy who lacked guidance becomes the man who guides others. The boy who lacked protection becomes the protector. The boy who searched for strength becomes the source of strength. Because the greatest transformation is not escaping your past. It is using your past to create a better future. Chapter 5: The Crisis of Modern Masculinity. Why so many men feel lost today. Every generation faces unique challenges. But every generation of men eventually faces the same fundamental question. What does it mean to be a man? For thousands of years, the answer was shaped through family, community, tradition, and responsibility. A young boy watched older men. He learned through observation. He learned through correction. He learned through experience. But the modern world has changed the environment in which many boys grow up. The old pathways into adulthood have weakened, and many young men are left searching for answers in a world filled with conflicting messages. A boy growing up today may have access to more information than any generation before him. He can learn almost anything with a few clicks. He can watch lectures from great thinkers. He can study history. He can communicate with people across the world. Yet despite this access, many young men report feeling lost, disconnected, without purpose, unsure of their role. This creates a strange contradiction. A generation with more information than ever before, but often less guidance. The problem is not that young men lack intelligence. The problem is that information is not the same as wisdom. A person can know thousands of facts and still not know how to handle failure, how to control emotions, how to build relationships, how to carry responsibility, how to create meaning. These lessons are not downloaded. They are developed through experience and mentorship. The disappearance of male guidance for most of history, boys grew up surrounded by multiple generations. A young man could learn from his father, his grandfather, his uncle, his community elders, his teachers, his mentors. He saw examples of adulthood. He saw men solving problems. He saw men carrying responsibility. But many modern societies have experienced changes. Families have become more fragmented. Communities have become less connected. People move more frequently. Technology has replaced many face-to-face interactions. Many boys now grow up with fewer examples of mature adulthood. The question becomes, if a boy does not see responsible manhood demonstrated, where does he learn it? The search for identity. Human beings are not designed to live without identity. Everyone wants answers to questions like, who am I? Where do I belong? What am I here to do? What makes my life meaningful? Young men especially often search for challenges and recognition. They want to prove themselves. They want to feel capable. They want to know they matter. This is not a weakness. It is part of human development. The danger comes when these needs are satisfied in destructive ways. A young man searching for brotherhood may find a gang. A young man searching for purpose may find a destructive ideology. A young man searching for recognition may seek attention through harmful behavior. The problem is not the desire itself. The problem is where that desire is directed. The comfort problem. One of the greatest challenges of modern life is not suffering. It is unlimited comfort. For most of human history, survival required struggle. People had to work, physically solve difficult problems, endure uncertainty, cooperate with others. Hardship was unavoidable. Today, technology has created unprecedented comfort. We can access entertainment instantly, food instantly, communication instantly, information instantly. These achievements are remarkable, but comfort has a hidden danger. A person who never experiences difficulty may never discover their own strength. A muscle grows through resistance. Character develops through challenge. Confidence develops through overcoming obstacles. The problem is not comfort itself. The problem is becoming addicted to avoiding every challenge. A person who constantly escapes discomfort eventually becomes controlled by it. The difference between weakness and vulnerability. One of the biggest misunderstandings about masculinity is the idea that a strong man never struggles. This is false. Every human being experiences fear, doubt, sadness, failure, pain. The difference is how a person responds. A weak man says, I feel fear, therefore I cannot act. A strong man says, I feel fear, but I will act according to my values. A weak man hides from his problems. A strong man faces them. A weak man refuses responsibility. A strong man accepts responsibility because he understands responsibility creates meaning. The role of responsibility. The psychologist Viktor Frankl argued that human beings need meaning. Without meaning, people often search for substitutes. They chase pleasure, status, recognition, power. But these things cannot replace purpose. A man becomes stronger when he carries responsibility. Responsibility for his health, his finances, his relationships, his choices, his future, his family, his community. This is why responsibility is not a burden. It is a path to identity. A person discovers who they are through what they choose to carry. The modern man's challenge. The modern man faces a difficult task. He must create strength in a world designed for comfort. He must develop discipline in a world designed for distraction. He must seek meaning in a world filled with entertainment. He must build character in a world focused on appearance. The solution is not returning blindly to the past. The world has changed. The solution is understanding timeless principles. Discipline, responsibility, purpose, courage, service, community. A strong man is not someone who controls everyone around him. A strong man is someone who controls himself. He does not need to prove his worth constantly. He knows his values. He does not avoid difficulty. He uses difficulty to grow. He does not run from responsibility. He understands responsibility is what gives life meaning. For the fatherless man, this lesson is especially important because the absence of a father can create a temptation to search endlessly for someone else to provide direction. But eventually, every man must take ownership of his own life. He must become the person responsible for his future. The world does not need more men who only demand respect. It needs men who earn trust, men who keep promises, men who protect others, men who build, men who guide. The crisis of modern masculinity is not solved by returning to old stereotypes. It is solved by creating mature men. Men who understand that strength is not about domination. Strength is about responsibility. A boy asks, "Who will take care of me?" A man asks, "Who can I take care of?" And that transformation is where true masculinity begins. Chapter 6: Building the Father Within. How a man rebuilds himself when guidance was missing. Every man eventually reaches a moment when he must face a difficult truth. The past cannot be changed. No amount of anger can rewrite childhood. No amount of regret can bring back lost years. No amount of wishing can force someone to become the person they were supposed to be. And yet, this painful truth contains something powerful, because when a man accepts that he cannot change the past, he discovers something else. He can influence the future. This is where transformation begins. Not when a man forgets his wounds, but when he decides that his wounds will no longer control him. A fatherless man often begins life searching for something outside himself. He searches for approval, direction, recognition, someone to say, "You are enough. You are capable, you can handle this." And there is nothing wrong with wanting those things. Every human being needs encouragement. Every child deserves guidance. But adulthood eventually requires a transformation. The voice of guidance that was missing outside must be developed within. This is what psychologists often describe as developing an internal foundation. A mature person carries within themselves the ability to make decisions, regulate emotions, correct mistakes, encourage themselves, hold themselves accountable. In simple terms, a man learns to become the father he needed. This does not mean pretending the absence did not hurt. It does not mean saying, "It never mattered." It mattered. The pain was real. The loss was real. The questions were real. But healing begins when a man stops allowing the past to control every decision he makes. The first step is awareness. A man must be honest with himself. He must ask, "What did I miss? How did it affect me? What patterns have I carried into adulthood? What beliefs about myself were created because of my experiences?" Many people avoid these questions because they are uncomfortable. But what remains hidden often remains powerful. A wound that is ignored continues influencing behavior from the shadows. A wound that is understood can begin to heal. Carl Jung wrote about the importance of confronting the hidden parts of ourselves. He called this the process of integrating the shadow. The shadow represents the parts of ourselves we do not want to acknowledge. Our fears, our insecurities, our anger, our weaknesses. The goal is not to hate these parts. The goal is to understand them. Because what we refuse to understand often controls us. A man who understands his pain gains something valuable: choice. He can say, "My father was absent, but I do not have to become absent. I experienced anger, but I do not have to pass anger forward. I experienced neglect, but I can choose presence." The next step is discipline. A father does not only provide love. A good father provides structure. He teaches, some things must be done even when you do not feel like doing them. This lesson is one of the foundations of adulthood. Discipline is the bridge between who you are and who you want to become. A man who develops discipline learns, "I can trust myself. I can rely on myself. I can keep promises. I can overcome discomfort. Small actions create this transformation. Waking up when you said you would, completing tasks you wanted to avoid, taking care of your body, learning new skills, managing your money, controlling your reactions. Every time a man keeps a promise to himself, something changes. He builds evidence. Evidence that says, I am capable, I can depend on myself, I have control over my choices. This is how confidence is actually created, not through positive words alone. Confidence is built through repeated proof. Another important part of self-fathering is emotional control. Many people misunderstand strength. They believe strength means having no emotions. But a person without emotions is not strong. A person without emotions is disconnected. True strength is the ability to experience emotions without becoming controlled by them. Anger can provide information, fear can provide information, sadness can provide information, but emotions should be advisors, not masters. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, understood this principle. He lived during war, political conflict, and personal tragedy. Yet he focused on one central idea. A person cannot control everything that happens, but a person can control how they respond. This principle is especially powerful for the fatherless man. He cannot control who his father was, what happened during childhood, what opportunities were lost, but he can control the man he becomes, the habits he builds, the values he follows, the people he influences. The journey also requires mentors. Self-fathering does not mean becoming isolated. No human being builds greatness alone. A wise man searches for examples. He studies people who possess qualities he wants to develop. He learns from older men, teachers, coaches, books, history, communities. A man without a father figure does not need to find one perfect replacement. Sometimes wisdom comes from many sources. One person teaches discipline, another teaches courage, another teaches patience, another teaches leadership. Together, they help build the person. Eventually, something remarkable happens. The man who once searched for guidance begins becoming guidance for others. The boy who needed encouragement becomes the man who encourages. The boy who needed protection becomes the protector. The boy who needed direction becomes the guide. This is the final purpose of transformation. Not simply becoming successful, not simply becoming powerful, but becoming useful. Viktor Frankl taught that meaning is discovered through responsibility. A meaningful life is not built by asking, what can I get from the world? It is built by asking, what does the world require from me? For the fatherless man, this question changes everything. Instead of remaining trapped by what was missing, he begins building what is needed. Instead of asking, why did nobody teach me? He begins asking, who can I teach? The strongest men are not those who had perfect beginnings. Many strong men are those who faced imperfect beginnings and chose responsibility. They did not allow their childhood to become their identity. They allowed it to become part of their story. A missing father can create a wound, but a disciplined man can create a future. The absence of guidance can become the motivation to develop wisdom. The absence of protection can become the desire to protect others. The absence of leadership can become the reason a man learns to lead. The father within is not created overnight. It is built through thousands of choices, every difficult decision, every responsibility accepted, every promise kept, every moment of self-control, every act of courage. Eventually, the man looks back and realizes something. The person he was waiting for was not coming, because the person he needed to become was already within him. Chapter 7: Brotherhood and Mentorship. Why no man becomes strong alone. There is a dangerous illusion in modern society. The illusion that strength means needing nobody. The image of the man who stands alone. The man who trusts nobody. The man who depends on nobody. This image appears powerful, but history tells a different story. The strongest men who ever lived were rarely built alone. Behind every great individual, there were usually people who shaped them. Teachers, friends, mentors, communities, brothers. People who challenged them when they were weak and encouraged them when they wanted to quit. The truth is simple. No man builds himself alone. A father is one of the most important influences in a boy's life, but a father is also part of a larger system. Throughout history, societies understood that raising strong men was a collective responsibility. A young man was surrounded by people who helped shape him. An elder provided wisdom. A teacher provided knowledge. A friend provided accountability. A mentor provided direction. A community provided belonging. This is why traditional societies placed so much importance on brotherhood. They understood that men develop through relationships with other men, not because men are perfect, not because every older man has wisdom, but because growth requires interaction. A person needs others who can challenge their weaknesses and reveal their blind spots. The lone wolf may survive, but the wolf that belongs to a strong pack is more likely to thrive. Human beings are similar. We are designed for connection. The philosopher Aristotle understood that character is not created only through thoughts. Character is created through practice, and practice happens within relationships. A person becomes courageous by repeatedly choosing courage. A person becomes disciplined by repeatedly practicing discipline. A person becomes wise by learning from others and from experience. For a young man without a father figure, mentorship can become a turning point. Sometimes one person can change the direction of an entire life. A teacher who notices potential, a coach who demands excellence, an employer who teaches responsibility, an older man who provides wisdom. Many successful people can identify individuals who influence their journey, not because those mentors gave them success, but because they helped them see possibilities they could not see themselves. A mentor does something powerful. A mentor expands a person's vision. A young man may think, "This is all I can become." A mentor says, "You are capable of more." But mentorship is not only encouragement. Real mentors also challenge. They do not simply tell someone what they want to hear. They tell them what they need to hear. They say, "You are better than this. You need more discipline. You need to take responsibility. You need to stop making excuses." This is why healthy brotherhood is different from simple friendship. A friend may comfort you. A brother helps you grow. A friend may celebrate your victories. A brother also confronts your weaknesses. Throughout history, powerful groups were built around this principle. The Spartans developed through collective training. The samurai developed through master-student relationships. Military organizations create bonds between people who face challenges together. Sports teams develop individuals through cooperation and competition. The lesson is universal. Shared struggle creates strong bonds. However, when positive brotherhood disappears, another type of brotherhood can take its place. This is one of the greatest dangers facing young men. Every person needs belonging. If a young man does not find a healthy community, he may accept an unhealthy one. A destructive group understands human psychology. It offers, "You belong here, you matter. You have a purpose, you have brothers." These messages are powerful because the needs behind them are real. The problem is not the desire for belonging. The problem is where that desire leads. This is why mentorship is not simply a personal issue. It is a social responsibility. A society that fails to guide young men creates a vacuum, and every vacuum eventually gets filled. The modern world has created another challenge. Many men are surrounded by people but still feel alone. They have online connections, social media followers, work relationships, but fewer deep relationships. Fewer people they can honestly speak with. Fewer people who know their struggles. Many men are taught to hide weakness. They believe admitting difficulty means failure, but this creates isolation, and isolation makes problems heavier. A strong man does not mean a man who never needs help. A strong man understands when to seek help. He understands that wisdom is found in learning from others. Pride says, "I already know everything." Humility says, "I can learn." The strongest men maintain three important relationships throughout life. First, the elder, someone ahead of you. Someone who has experienced things you have not. The elder provides perspective. Second, the equal, someone walking beside you. Someone who shares the struggle, someone who holds you accountable. Third, the younger, someone you guide, someone who benefits from what you have learned. This creates a cycle. You receive wisdom. You develop strength. You give wisdom. You create legacy. A fatherless man must understand something important. The absence of one man does not mean the absence of all men. The world is full of teachers. The world is full of examples. The world is full of people who can contribute to your growth, but you must seek them. The question is not, who should have been there? That question belongs to the past. The more powerful question is, who can help me become who I need to become? A man becomes strong through responsibility, but he becomes wise through learning. He becomes resilient through hardship, but he becomes better through community. The final lesson of brotherhood is this: a strong man does not stand alone at the top. He stands among people he has learned from and people he helps rise. Because true strength is not proven by how high you climb alone. It is proven by how many people become stronger because you were there. The fatherless boy searches for someone to guide him. The developing man searches for wisdom. The strong man becomes the guide for others, and that is how broken cycles are transformed. Chapter 8: Breaking the Generational Cycle. How fatherless men become the fathers they needed. Every person inherits something from the generation before them. Sometimes they inherit wisdom. Sometimes they inherit traditions. Sometimes they inherit values that strengthen their lives. But sometimes they inherit wounds. Anger, fear, neglect, pain. Patterns that continue from one generation to another. The greatest challenge for the fatherless man is not only healing himself, it is deciding what he will pass forward. Because every man eventually faces a choice. Will I repeat what happened to me, or will I transform it? Generational patterns are powerful because they often operate silently. A child learns not only through instruction. A child learns through observation. A boy watches how his father handles pressure, how he treats people, how he responds to failure, how he deals with emotions, how he carries responsibility. These lessons are often absorbed without a single word being spoken. A man who grows up experiencing anger may unconsciously carry anger into his own family. A man who grows up experiencing emotional distance may struggle to show affection. A man who grows up experiencing abandonment may struggle with commitment, not because he wants to repeat the past, but because the past became familiar. This is one of the most important discoveries in psychology. People often repeat what they have not consciously examined. What is not understood is often repeated. This is why transformation begins with awareness. A man must stop and ask, what did I receive from my childhood? What damaged me? What helped me? What patterns must end with me? The strongest men are not those who pretend their past was perfect. They are those courageous enough to examine their past honestly. They look at their wounds and say, this happened, but this will not control the future. One of the greatest misunderstandings about healing is that people think healing means forgetting. It does not. Healing means remembering without being controlled. A healed wound becomes a lesson. An unhealed wound becomes a chain. The fatherless man who becomes a father faces a unique responsibility. He has an opportunity that previous generations may not have had. He can create something different. He can become the person he once needed. But becoming a good father requires more than simply avoiding mistakes. Many men say, I will never be like my father. That is a starting point. But it is not enough. A child does not only need the absence of bad behavior. A child needs the presence of good behavior. A strong father provides presence, protection, guidance, discipline, love. Example, presence means being available, not only physically present, emotionally present. A child remembers, did my father notice me? Did my father listen? Did my father make time for me? Protection means creating safety. A father protects a child from danger, but he also protects through stability, through consistency, through creating an environment where the child knows, I am not alone. Guidance means teaching. A father does not simply tell a child what to do. He helps the child understand why. He teaches how to solve problems, how to handle failure, how to treat others, how to make decisions. Discipline is another important part of fatherhood. Some people misunderstand discipline as punishment, but true discipline is preparation. A father teaches, the world will not always give you what you want. Learn patience, learn responsibility, learn self-control. Love is the foundation underneath everything, but love without guidance can create weakness. Guidance without love can create fear. A strong father combines both. He provides compassion and standards. This balance is difficult, because many wounded men struggle with extremes. A man who experienced harshness may become afraid to set boundaries. A man who experienced neglect may become afraid of emotional closeness. Transformation requires learning balance. The goal is not to become the opposite of your father. The goal is to become better, because reacting to the past still means the past controls you. True freedom is creating your own principles. This idea appears throughout the work of psychologists who study human development. A person must move from unconscious repetition toward conscious choice. The child often repeats. The mature adult chooses. Viktor Frankl's philosophy applies deeply here. He believed that even after suffering, people still have the ability to choose their response. The fatherless man may not choose what happened to him, but he can choose what happens through him. He can choose, the anger stops with me, the neglect stops with me, the irresponsibility stops with me, the pain stops with me. This is one of the most powerful decisions a man can make, to become the turning point in his family history. Many men chase success because they want to prove something. They want recognition, they want respect. But there is another form of success that is rarely celebrated. Becoming a good father, becoming a reliable husband, becoming a mentor, becoming someone younger people can look up to. A man may never become famous. He may never appear in history books. But if he changes the life of his child, his impact continues. Because legacy is not only about what you leave behind, it is about who you leave behind. The fatherless boy often begins life with a painful question. Why did I not receive what I needed? But the transformed man eventually asks, what does someone else need from me? This is the moment when the cycle breaks. The wounded child becomes the responsible adult. The responsible adult becomes the protective father. The protective father becomes the foundation for a new generation. The greatest victory of a fatherless man is not proving that he survived. It is proving that his past did not win. He becomes evidence that circumstances do not have the final word. A father may have shaped your beginning, but your choices shape what comes next. And sometimes the strongest fathers are created by men who once knew exactly what it felt like to need one. Chapter 9, The Blueprint of the Strong Man, the principles that transform a wounded boy into a responsible man. Throughout history, societies have searched for the answer to one question. What creates a strong man? Different cultures have given different answers. Some believed strength came from physical power. Others believed it came from wealth, status, or influence. But when we examine the lives of truly respected men throughout history, a deeper pattern appears. Strength is not simply the ability to control others. Strength is the ability to control yourself. It is the ability to carry responsibility. It is the ability to remain disciplined when nobody is watching. It is the ability to use your power to protect, create, and serve. A strong man is not defined by what he can take from the world. He is defined by what he can contribute to it. The fatherless man often begins his journey with a disadvantage. He may have lacked guidance. He may have lacked examples. He may have had to discover lessons later in life that others learned earlier. But the process of transformation reveals something important. A man can build himself, not perfectly, not instantly, but deliberately. The first foundation of strength is self-mastery. Before a man can lead anything outside himself, he must learn to lead himself. A man who cannot control his own actions is controlled by something else. He may be controlled by anger, fear, laziness, addiction, approval from others, temporary pleasure. The ancient Stoic philosophers understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius, one of Rome's greatest emperors, wrote about the importance of mastering one's own mind. He lived through war, political betrayal, personal loss, disease, yet his philosophy remained focused on one principle: control what you can control. A strong man understands he cannot control every event. He cannot control every person. He cannot control the past, but he can control his response, his choices, his effort, his character. This is where freedom begins, not when life becomes easy, but when a person becomes capable of responding wisely to difficulty. The second foundation of strength is discipline. Many people admire success. Few admire the discipline required to create it. The world sees the achievement. It rarely sees the repetition behind it. The early mornings, the sacrifices, the failures, the uncomfortable choices. Discipline is the ability to do what must be done even when emotions disagree. A disciplined man does not ask, "Do I feel like doing this?" He asks, "Is this necessary?" A father teaches this lesson naturally. He tells a child, "You must finish what you start. You must learn patience. You must accept consequences." When that lesson is missing, a man must consciously develop it himself. Discipline is how a person rebuilds trust with himself. Every promise kept creates confidence. Every responsibility accepted creates strength. Every difficult choice completed creates evidence. I can depend on myself. The third foundation of strength is Emotional control. Many people misunderstand emotional strength. They believe a strong man feels nothing. This is not strength, it is emotional emptiness. A strong man feels deeply, but he chooses wisely. Anger can be useful, fear can be useful, sadness can be useful. Emotions provide information, but emotions should not become the driver. A mature man allows emotions to speak, but he does not allow emotions to rule. A man controlled by anger destroys relationships. A man controlled by fear avoids opportunities. A man controlled by insecurity constantly seeks approval. But a man who understands himself can respond with wisdom. The fourth foundation of strength is competence. Confidence without ability is fragile. A strong man develops skills. He learns. He improves. He becomes useful. Competence creates independence. A man who can solve problems becomes valuable. A man who can create value becomes respected. A man who can contribute becomes trusted. Robert Greene's writings on mastery emphasize a timeless principle. Greatness is usually the result of years of deliberate improvement. There are no shortcuts to becoming capable. The fifth foundation of strength is responsibility. This may be the most important principle, because responsibility transforms a person. A boy often asks, "Who will take care of me?" A man asks, "What needs to be done?" Responsibility gives life direction. It gives a person something larger than personal comfort. A man responsible for his family, his work, his community, his future, begins to understand his purpose. This is why responsibility is not a burden, it is an opportunity. It gives a person a reason to grow. The sixth foundation of strength is courage. Courage does not mean having no fear. Every human being experiences fear. Courage means acting despite fear. A strong man faces difficult, comfortable truths, failure, uncertainty, change. Avoiding difficulty creates weakness. Facing difficulty creates capability. The seventh foundation of strength is service. The final transformation of a man occurs when he understands that strength exists for something beyond himself. Power without purpose becomes selfishness. Strength without compassion becomes cruelty. Knowledge without service becomes arrogance. The strongest men use their abilities to improve the lives of others. They protect, they build, they teach, they contribute. This is the difference between a powerful man and a great man. A powerful man asks, "How much can I gain?" A great man asks, "How much can I give?" The blueprint of the strong man can therefore be summarized. Master yourself, develop discipline, control your emotions, build competence, accept responsibility, face fear, serve others. For the fatherless man, this blueprint represents something more than personal improvement. It represents reconstruction. He is not simply becoming successful. He is rebuilding the foundation that was missing. The boy who once searched for approval learns self-respect. The boy who once searched for direction develops principles. The boy who once searched for protection becomes a protector. The boy who needed guidance becomes a guide. A strong man is not created by avoiding weakness. He is created by confronting weakness. He looks at his flaws and says, "I will improve." He looks at his responsibilities and says, "I will carry them." He looks at his future and says, "I will build it." Because in the end, masculinity is not measured by appearance. It is measured by character, not by how loudly a man speaks, but by how consistently he acts. Not by how many people fear him, but by how many people can trust him. The journey from fatherless boy to strong man is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming dependable, becoming disciplined, becoming responsible, becoming the kind of man that others are safer because he exists. Chapter 10, From Fatherless Boy to Legacy Builder, the final transformation. Becoming the man others need. Every journey eventually reaches a moment of reflection. The fatherless boy looks back at the road behind him. He remembers the questions, the confusion, the moments when he wondered, "Why was I not given what I needed? Why did I have to figure this out alone? Why did someone who was supposed to guide me disappear?" These questions are real. They deserve honesty. But there comes a point when another question becomes more important. What will I do with the life I still have? A man cannot rewrite the beginning of his story, but he can influence the ending. This is one of the greatest truths about human beings. We are shaped by our experiences, but we are not imprisoned by them. The fatherless man begins his journey carrying a wound, but if he chooses growth, he eventually discovers something unexpected. The same experience that created pain can also create purpose. A man who knows abandonment understands the importance of presence. A man who knows confusion understands the importance of guidance. A man who knows weakness understands the importance of strength. A man who knows suffering understands the importance of compassion. This is the final stage of transformation, turning personal pain into something valuable. Throughout this documentary, we have explored men who experienced difficult beginnings. Frederick Douglass transformed a childhood marked by separation and oppression into a life dedicated to freedom and education. Malcolm X transformed anger and confusion into discipline, knowledge, and purpose. Nelson Mandela transformed hardship and loss into leadership and reconciliation. Their lives reveal a powerful principle. A person's greatest struggle can become the source of their greatest contribution. But transformation requires a decision. Every fatherless man eventually faces a crossroads. One path leads backward, the path of resentment, the path of blaming, the path of asking, why did this happen to me? The other path leads forward, the path of responsibility, the path of growth, the path of asking, what can I become because of what happened? This does not mean a man should ignore injustice. It does not mean painful experiences should be dismissed. It means a person refuses to surrender the rest of their life to something they cannot change. Viktor Frankl discovered this truth through unimaginable suffering. He understood that human beings can lose many things. They can lose comfort, they can lose possessions, they can lose freedom. But there remains one important freedom, the ability to choose one's response. This principle is the foundation of transformation. The fatherless man may not have chosen his childhood, but he can choose his character, he can choose his habits, he can choose his relationships, he can choose his legacy. Legacy is often misunderstood. Many people think legacy means fame, wealth, recognition, a name remembered by millions. But the deepest legacy is often quieter. It is found in the lives we influence. A father who teaches his son responsibility creates legacy. A mentor who guides a young man creates legacy. A man who breaks destructive family patterns creates legacy. A person who becomes better so others suffer less creates legacy. The greatest victory of a fatherless man is not proving that he did not need anyone. Humans need people. The greatest victory is proving that his past did not prevent him from becoming someone valuable. A strong man understands something important. He is not only responsible for himself, he is responsible for what comes after him. The question changes from, what did I receive, to, what will I give? This is the transition from survival to purpose. A survivor asks, how do I escape? A builder asks, what can I create? A leader asks, who can I help rise? The fatherless man who transforms himself becomes something extraordinary. He becomes the father figure he once searched for, not only for his children, but for younger men watching him, for people who need encouragement, for communities that need responsibility. He becomes proof that circumstances do not have the final word. He becomes proof that missing pieces can be rebuilt. He becomes proof that a person can inherit pain and still create peace. The world does not need perfect men. Perfect men do not exist. The world needs men who are honest about their weaknesses and committed to growth. Men who understand strength is not never falling. Strength is learning how to rise. The fatherless boy once looked outward and asked, who will guide me? The mature man looks inward and asks, how will I guide myself? The strong man looks outward again and asks, who can I help? This is the complete transformation. The wounded child becomes the responsible adult. The responsible adult becomes the protector. The protector becomes the mentor. The mentor becomes the foundation for future generations. A father may influence where a boy begins, but a man decides where he goes. The absence of a father can explain the struggle, but it does not determine the destiny. The final lesson is simple. You cannot choose every chapter that is written about you, but you can choose what chapter you write next. For every man who grew up without the guidance he needed, your past matters, your pain matters, your story matters, but your future matters too. Become the man you needed. Become the example you searched for. Become the strength you once wished someone would give you. Because sometimes the greatest fathers are created from boys who once needed one. And sometimes the strongest men are not those who had the easiest beginnings. They are those who decided, the pain stops with me. The responsibility begins with me. The legacy continues through me.